For details, please call 639-2125, extension 2112.
Until October 15th, there be no penalty. Everybody could come in the tax amnesty. Till October 15th, avoiding penalties. Everybody could come in the tax amnesty. If you own a business, NGO, individual, don't miss this. Tell the neighbor, your friend, them about this. Yeah, go and tell them about this. 2 ways to fight. Without TT Connect ID, we will make sure you smile. Check the closest district revenue office and get in line. So go on a scoop up point 14. Everybody could come in. Princess down Rio Claro. It's a one down in Sando. Sunday Randy Saparia. Port and Spain to Nupuna. And if you're in Tobago, it's a one down in Scamborough. The Ministry of Finance advises that the tax amnesty has been extended to Friday, October 15th, 2021. For more information, please visit www.ird.gov.tt or call the hotline at 800-TAX. That's 800-8299. Tax amnesty.
Hello world. Hello world. This is www.i955fm.com, Trinidad.
This Sunday on episode 41 of Ion Dependency, reality radio at its best.
Sunday, October 10th is World Mental Health Day. And this year, the theme focuses on mental health in an unequal world. We dedicate this program to the men and women of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service with all the challenges they face from day to day, including the loss of colleagues to the coronavirus. And in the line of duty, how is the mental health of police officers being managed? This Sunday on On Dependency, Garth and Natasha welcome the president of the Police Social and Association, ASP Gideon Dickson, via video, and joining us in studio will be psychiatrist Professor Gerard Hutchinson to discuss the mental health needs of persons in stressful occupations. Tune in live from 6:15 p.m. on I-95.5 FM or watch live on the On Dependency Facebook page or YouTube channel. On Dependency, we don't just share stories, we change lives.
This is Eye on Dependency with Garth and Natasha, Sundays at 6:15 p.m. on the most influential name in radio, I-95.5 FM.
Eye on Dependency with Garth and Natasha.
Reality radio at its best. Where every life is a biography.
Sundays at 6:15 p.m. and exclusively on the 95.5 FM.
And broadcast live on the Eye on Dependency Facebook page.
This song is dedicated to my mother and mothers all over the world who suffers at the hands of their crack-addicted sons and daughters. This one is for you. Hindsight is 20/20 vision. Thank God I've been set free. Now that I'm in a clean position, I want to help somebody. Because somebody crying, somebody dying, some other poor soul rolling on the floor. Some homes are drifting because somebody piping a cocaine rock that leads them to death's door. Hope is death and destruction, I come to underscore. For all the pain I put you through and all them senseless things I do, mother, I'm sorry, so sorry. Although I robbed you to buy crack, you never ever turn your back. You stood right by me. So if I never hug you and tell you thanks, well, this calypso is the medium I used to say, Frank, how much I love you. I pray that my testimony will be the bridge across which some cocaine addict will do like me and make a clean switch. I am my brother's keeper. Tell the world I am.
Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago, and welcome to Eye on Dependency, right here on 95.5 FM, live on the Independence Facebook page and YouTube channel. Good evening, Natasha.
Good evening, Garth. Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome to Eye on Dependency. We have a guest in studio. We haven't had a guest in so long, so it's our pleasure to welcome him into the studio for this important topic that we're discussing here today on World Mental Health Day. Allow me to introduce Professor Gerard Hutchinson, who is a friend of the program. He's been on the program before. He's a psychiatrist, but we'll talk a little bit with him before we cross to our guest, who will join us via video.
And our guest will be President of the Police Social and Welfare Division, ASP Gideon Dickson. No stranger to the airwaves now. He has been
making the rounds,
speaking on behalf of the men and women of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, representing them.
Yes.
And he will join us via video call. And today we dedicate this to the police service, but as we said in the promo, those with high pressure jobs. So that'll be all arms of the protective service, really. Especially
and even healthcare providers,
right,
COVID
and
time
teachers,
well.
and even the youngsters going back out of school. And we spoke about that last week, about the pressure that they will face, especially peer pressure. And so Professor Hutchinson will this evening guide us as we go along. Good evening to you, Professor.
Yeah, hi, good evening, Garth. Good evening, Natasha, and to all your listeners and viewers. And thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Philip, the name of the song is My Brother's Keeper. It was sung by Garth Sinclair. Thank you for asking. Just wanted to find out. So yes, so this evening, as I said, Professor, the theme for this year's observance is the mental health in an unequal world. Professor, can you elaborate on that, please?
Well, the celebration or the commemoration of World Mental Health Day is tied to themes. So every year they dedicate the theme to an area that it is felt is deserving of greater attention. And this year the theme is mental health in an unequal world. And I think the reason for that, first of all, is I think one of the most striking outcomes of the pandemic that we've been experiencing is its impact on the people who are less advantaged, the people who had already been facing a lot of pressure and living in ways that will disadvantage us. So the idea of inequality, and inequality for any reason, whether it's income inequality, social inequality, gender inequality, I think the acknowledgement is that people's mental health, alongside other things of course, but especially their mental health will suffer in a really tremendous way unless that inequality is addressed. So I think it's on one hand to recognize that in this unequal world, there's a need to address the mental health of those who are disadvantaged, but also to recognize that if you are disadvantaged, your mental health is likely to be affected, and therefore the interventions are not just to address the mental health issues, but in address the issues related to inequality.
And I remember the last time you were here, we were talking about some of the strides that we had made in Trinidad and Tobago in terms of closing the gaps for those persons who are less able to access the services available. How far along are we on that path, and how accessible are services for mental health services for persons who need it?
Well, I think we are or have made some progress. I think the progress has been slow, and I think the pandemic has slowed it in some ways even more. Although everyone acknowledges the mental health consequences of the pandemic, but I think our systems here still perhaps too bureaucratic, and in terms of reaching out to communities and reaching out to people, it is still dependent on the people to come to the service rather than the service going to the people. I think that's on one hand, and then we continue to underserve many populations, children and young people, adolescents, the elderly. We have not developed, I think, adequate enough services for those groups. People living under certain situations, the homeless, people living in prisons.
Persons with disabilities.
People with disabilities. So there are a lot of populations that remain underserved.
Including, I assume, persons in high-risk jobs like the gentleman who we're going to talk to this evening.
Yes, yes. Sorry, Tasha, and we have a short video clip to show you all. As usual, we try to do that from time to time. With the police service, you remember when police officers were in short pants? Well, and cock hat, shorts and putties they call them, right? So we're going to show you a 3-minute. This was posted by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. And, back then, that was way back then, when they showed you how they were recruiting police officers.
Very early post-colonial times, it looks like to me.
And the police service have come of age really where that was concerned. But it's been interesting to see then and now, the police service then and now. And the professor will help us guide this discussion this evening because police officers, for one, have been under real pressure. But Professor, before we go to that, let's talk about in the workplace, whether simple, normal operations in the workplace, whether it's a radio station, whether it's ministry, whether it's, could there be people in these institutions, one who they come into work but they really don't want to be here, and then there are people who make their tenure deliberately or unconsciously stressful, and they just have no one to speak with. How important is that to have an employee assistance program where that is concerned, and how you would ask individuals to treat with some, a situation like that?
Well, I think the presence of employee assistance program or any kind of program that addresses the mental health of staff and employees is critical. It's I think in today's world a necessity. People spend a lot of time at work, or a lot of time dealing with work, and of course particularly the workers in the protective services and workers who do high stress or high risk jobs. So that in itself, just the nature of the work, would mean that they are subject to more stress than the average person. And unfortunately, the challenges that you face in your life do not disappear when you step into work. And those challenges influence how you deal with your surroundings. And in some instances, even the supervisors or the employers themselves, they bring their difficulties to work, and in so doing, abuse or take advantage of their workers. So I think that the opportunity to deal with those issues is critical in order to create a workplace environment that allows the workers to be optimally productive. I think recognizing that mental health contributes to that productivity is the other part of the challenge. And there's a concept called presenteeism, in which the person comes to work, so is present, but doesn't work in the way that they're accustomed to because of that underlying mental health challenge. And and presenteeism is a major problem. With absenteeism, at least the person isn't there, so you don't expect anything of them. But and I think when we look around ourselves, we see a lot of people who are present but struggling.
Yeah, because there are people who actually in your workplace that you would meet. Now, Natasha and I deal with mental illness Sunday to Sunday, Sunday to Sunday, and there are some people who you would meet along the way who will go out of their way to make you feel that it's nothing, and they do it so well, and sometimes I want to think that they're really suffering from some kind of because it's I mean, they do it so well and then put on a good face to the public, and that is kind of scary to me. That's a scary person, and who should seek help, but they don't think that they need help, and that is the problem. And they deliberately go out of their way to make people's lives miserable, and so that when some people, it's not nice having to go to work and having to say the 23rd Psalm when you reach the door to go inside. Some people have to do that because and then in some cases, some people, your spirit irritates their demons, and it's really a sad thing. And I could speak for the protective service, for the where I served, and other members of the protective service could speak to this as well. That there's always this senior or junior person who always on your case for no reason, just because they don't like your head. You can do them anything, and like we have a saying in the military, always on your back like a wet shirt. And no matter what you do, they will continue to make your tenure miserable.
But ironically, isn't that supposed to test your fortitude, so to speak, and to test your ability to resist those pressures and thrive in spite of them? Because in those kinds of military or paramilitary environments, talking about your feelings is not, it's not encouraged. It's not.
But if the person has poor coping skills,
right,
and that is an issue too, coping skills. How does one acquire coping skills, if it can be acquired at all?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, I think the acquisition of coping skills is supposed to be a process that is developmental. As you grow older and you learn more things, you learn from the people around you, you learn from the environment that you grow up in. But of course, sometimes the challenges that you face might be so unexpected or so severe that your coping skills become inadequate.
Right.
So it's really, I mean, the aim is to adapt to life, whatever the challenges are. But in some instances, the challenges become too much, so that adaptation is, if not impossible, is extremely difficult.
Because there are some now, the protective service, they put you through an individual through a series of stressful situations during training. Is it that? But once they get out there in the lines, there's a different response to the kind of stress that they would meet. So is it that the person can adapt, knowing that stress will last for a certain period, but once that is over and then another stress steps in for a longer period of time, is it that they cave then? Or is it a person, as I said, can the body or mentally adapt? Well, look, this is just for 3 months, this is just for 4 months, so I could take the costs, I could take the push-ups, I could take the sweating, but what happens after?
Well, it's like a balloon, so that it absorbs the incoming air up to a certain point, and then once it goes beyond that point, then it's likely to burst. So what determines how far it could go is a function of, as I said, your own the skills that you've come into the situation with, which would have been the kinds of things you experienced growing up, the kind of parent or kind of environment your parents or your caregivers created for you, and your expectations. So the physical stress, the demands of training, are in some ways a little easier to manage than the psychic stress, because psychic stress calls on different levels of adaptation. Because when you stress physically, the stress is immediate, and you're able to, when it's finished, as you said, you could rest, you could recuperate. But because of your memory, psychic stress stays with you. And that is where the difficulty to cope comes in. So it might affect your sleep. You might start having nightmares. You know, you might be doing one thing, but your mind can't forget the whatever was said or whatever was threatened, and that is what then undermines your ability to cope.
No, for me, okay, like we have ASP Dickson here who started off just like every other recruit in the police service. We have people in the prison, police, all these institutions who will start off with on the same starting line. And some will go through till the retirement, but then there are those who would fall by the wayside during that journey, you know. And it always, no, I could understand from my point of view how I grew up as a child. Its foundation has a lot to do with it too.
Yes, definitely, and the kinds of relationships you nurture, the kinds of models you have to choose from, and your own ability to remain focused on your goals, because the pressure or the ill will that might come from above is, as you said before, designed to destabilize you and make you less committed and capable to achieve those goals. And once you deviate from that, then it becomes very easy for you to, fall into the trap of instability and psychological distress.
Well, let's see if we could help ASP Dickson, Gideon Dickson, this evening with this and his men and women of the police service. So we could take a break, folks. If you're just joining us to listen to Independency, we have Professor Gerard Hutchinson in studio, and we have ASP Gideon Dickson via video call this evening. We're going to take a break, and when we return, we're going to show you those shorts and putty days of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, 3 minutes video. All of us would have been children back then.
Non-existent in my case.
And then we'll hook up with ASP Dickson.
Yes.
So you can join us still if you wish. You're live on radio or our Independency Facebook page or YouTube channel. We'll be back.
This is reality radio at its best. Eye on Dependency on I-95.5 FM.
I'm a recovering addict. I'm the outreach coordinator of Rebirth House. Rebirth House is a rehabilitation center for people who use drugs and they want to stop using, and people with other addictions. We do like individual counseling with them. We have facilities in Chagaramas, Belmont, and St. Anne's. Our admission office at the corner of Charlotte and Oxford Street, Port Spain, and our phone numbers are 623-0952 and 627-8894.
This Sunday on Ion Health, we focus on drug treatment and rehabilitation. Tune in at a special time, 8 p.m. on TV6 and from 8:30 p.m. on the Ion Dependency YouTube channel.
The government of Trinidad and Tobago, through the National Task Force Against Trafficking in Persons, continues to develop and implement effective policies and procedures to prevent and suppress human trafficking. To date, the National Task Force has developed 2 national plans of action against the crime of trafficking in persons. Trinidad and Tobago adopts a 4-pronged approach in its response to human trafficking. 1. Effective identification of victims and witnesses. 2. Prevention of human trafficking. 3. protection of victims and witnesses, and 4, prosecution of suspected traffickers. In the Ministry of National Security, we established a specialized unit called the Counter-Trafficking Unit to lead and manage Trinidad and Tobago's response to human trafficking. The Counter-Trafficking Unit works closely with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the Immigration Division, and international law enforcement agencies to aggressively and proactively investigate and prosecute suspected human traffickers. Human trafficking is a serious crime. Rest assured, the government of Trinidad and Tobago and its agencies remain committed in the fight against human trafficking and will respond with immediate effect when the need arises.
We are the Counter-Trafficking Unit of the Ministry of National Security, Trinidad and Tobago, safeguarding human life.
Hi, I'm Peter Slowly. I'm a Deputy Chief with the Toronto Police Service. You're listening to Eye on Dependency with Garth and Natasha, Trinidad and Tobago.
This song is dedicated to my mother and mothers all over the world who suffer at the hands of their crack-addicted sons and daughters. This one is for you. Hindsight is 20/20, vision, thank God I've been set free. Now that I'm in a clean position, I want to help somebody. Because somebody crying, somebody dying, some other poor soul rolling on the floor. Some homes are drifting because somebody piping a cocaine rock that leads them to death's door. Dope is death and destruction, I come to underscore. For all the pain I put you through and all them senseless things I do, mother, I'm sorry, so sorry. Although I robbed you to buy crack, you never ever turn your back. You stood right by me. So if I never hug you, I'll tell you thanks. Well, this calypso is the medium I used to say, Frank, how much I love you. I pray that my testimony will be the bridge across which some cocaine addicts will do like me and make a clean switch.
Alright folks, thank you for staying with us. Shortman, let's go to that video of police officers. Of course, you on the radio can listen to the audio and just, you know, they say radio is theater of the mind. So you can actually picture what you're hearing. Let's go to that with the police officers back in the shorts and putties, cork hat and all. Let's take a look at that.
Controlling traffic, on office work at headquarters or on other duty, sentry guard, as a member of the mounted branch, or on motorcycle patrol, the policeman is the symbol of law and order in our society. But there is need for more policemen as our population increases, and hundreds of young men answer the call for recruitment. There are certain basic physical requirements which each candidate must satisfy. Emphasis is placed on height, 5 feet 7.5 inches being minimal. This is to ensure that recruits possess a good military bearing. Those measuring up to the necessary height requirements undergo further physical examination. Chest measurement of 34 inches and over being acceptable. The recruits will undergo 6 months of extensive training covering from rifle drill to judo, and the selecting officers must make sure that the men they select meet the basic and required standard. Recruits must also pass the scrutinizing eyes of other officers, whose duty it is to critically examine them for twisted limbs, minor impediments to speech, and other physical defects. The men selected must be in first-class physical condition. Applicants are given a simple IQ test, including general knowledge. This is to ensure that besides being physically fit, they possess some basic educational standard. During their 6 months of training, they are also expected to absorb court procedure, basic criminal law, and police duties. And now comes the happy day. The Honorable the Minister of Home Affairs presents the awards for outstanding work done during training. A momentous occasion in the lives of these men as they assume the responsibility for the upkeep of law and order. A passing out parade ended with a brilliant display by the Motorcycle Corps. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Force has had a long and distinguished history, and its new members are proud to take their place beside men such as these. A thrilling display illustrating the versatility of the police force.
So there you have a little snippet of what the police force, as it was known then, looked like. I want to believe this is pre-independence, because I think it changed to a service after independence. But as I say, post-colonial, look at what the police service recruitment looked like. An interesting look back. I want to jump in very
and we could
quickly.
have ASP Dickson now. We could
Yes.
join us now, and we invite him to.
Yes, ASP Dickson, thank you very much for agreeing to speak on Ion Dependency. I think this is your first time with us.
Yes, good afternoon, please. Mr. Garth Sinclair, Ms. Natasha Sinclair, Professor Hutchinson, the whole I-95 family, and all those who are listening worldwide. Thanks for having me. It's my first time.
You recognize anybody in that video?
Oh, God.
That interesting question. And I would just want to say that I would have gone through some of those recruiting process back in my days when I entered the service in 1994. So as much as you might think that the days of short pants police have since been outdated, when I entered, we trained in short pants, right? And we would have gone through similar recruiting process.
Okay, so the height measurement and all of that too?
Still stands.
Wow. Interested. Now, but to go straight to the topic at hand, I mean, from the time you were a recruit to now in your position as president of the Welfare Association, what have you observed, experienced as it relates to mental health of the men and women who are serving in the police service?
Well, the truth be told is that mental health as a phenomenon has always been there. And one of the things we must applaud our instructors at the academy, and I hope presently they are doing it still, is trying to prepare the recruits for what is for what is to be expected when they come out into the broader society, having been trained in the art and science of policing. So that 6 months that I referred to was really a memorable, life-changing experience, which most recruits, most police officers would always say that that period might have been the best period in the organization, because though the foundation was there to prepare you mentally for the challenges outside, coming and actually face it as a full-fledged police officer, there was still some variations and some gaps to be filled. So you oftentimes have to fall back on your own socialization, your own cultural beliefs, your ability to learn from those who have gone before you, your ability to read, your ability to observe, and your ability to make the right choices.
And that's a difficult road for a lot of young men and women to walk. I mean, we were just speaking before you came on with the professor about how when you are in that training environment and the screws are turned up, you are motivated, I suppose, to move past that. But then when you pass out and you hit the ground running and you walk in the station, and a few weeks in and the screws turn again, you may or you may not have the coping skills to treat with that. So as far as you are aware, what is in place in order to help, whether they're new recruits or in the service 20 plus years like yourself, what is in place to assist the officers to cope with the very stressful job that you do?
Right, and I accept wholeheartedly that policing is a stressful job, and I also would want to put on record that we have made some significant strides, because when I introduced there, I spoke of what actually happened at the recruiting phase. Now, in the practicality, because the organization continues to evolve, we have in place a social work unit, we have in place a victim support unit, we also have in place a help desk from the Police Human Resource Department, and we also have the Police Welfare Association, which all try to play an integral role in ensuring the mental capacity, the mental focus of our officers are still maintained to a great extent.
So you are taking over a very important role, and I guess you would have come in with your ideas of what you would like to see and what you would like to see implemented as well. How successful have you been so far?
In the area of mental, so we stick in. Now, I might have ideas and have, because I have came from the belly of the beast, for want of a better phrase, came to the organization and have seen many different traumatic experiences. What happened is that when my team and I would have entered office in 2019, primarily the association focused more so on trying to ensure officers would have benefited from promotion and benefited from salary negotiations. We would have done a survey asking the membership to identify 5 other areas which they would prefer, which they see as important to them, that they would want the association to look at. And in doing that survey, we saw issues relating to health, issues relating to their work environment, issues related to education advancement, issues related to housing. They played a trigger point or an important point in terms of what the officers wanted. Against that backdrop, we were able to strategize and try to deliver on some of these areas. So in terms of how successful have my team of executive members and the central committee who assist in this have been to date, within the 2 years and 5 months or 4 months we have been in office, 2 years and 4 months, you could say that if I have to give us a grade, it will be in and around 7, 7, 7.5 or thereabouts. There's room for improvement like everything else. That being said, we have been engaging our social work unit. We have also engaged our victim support unit. And if you look at what has happened, particularly over the year here, and well, over the last 18, 19 months, and the COVID strike, and you would realize that as a body, police officers, we have not been spared by no stretch of the imagination. Our labor force have been impacted significantly. Commendation must be given to the officers and they who maintain their level of commitment and dedication to duty and in the interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. The data shows that over 4,547 of our officers have been impacted by the COVID one way or the other. We have had 15 deaths. We have had, out of that 4,557, only 62 presently are not back out besides those who have died. So the officers have risen to the occasion. Even in rising to the occasion, we also saw that on several occasions we have to call in for the support system of our social work unit and also our victim support officers. Because again, in a bid to maintain an operational front, because policing is in fact one which you need to be outside there, we have to ensure that the mental capability, the mental focus of our officers continue to be intact. We have some data in terms of from the social work unit who have, when you look at the data as at from January this year to present, have over 130 officers they would have had to reach out to provide that level of intervention, whilst the victim support office of unit have done another, I don't want to misquote, let me just give you that data of the, but they have done up to this day from January 1st to present, they would have engaged at least 53 officers and their family. So the mental health issue is alive, right? In the past, because of how we have been cultured, you would see that I referred earlier to how the instructors might have tried to train you, the individual, for what lies ahead. There wasn't nothing beyond that training. But now as an organization, there's effort, there is a drive to try to bridge that gap apart from that 6 months training, because your profession continues long beyond that 6 months. So we are moving in the right direction. There's room for improvement. We also want to see a more buoyant EAP program so that officers and their family by extension could have that holistic support.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that EAP because it is something that we here on our Dependency have clamored for, and I'm glad that you shared those numbers with us because it is very heartwarming to know that officers are being treated for the issues that they have in this way. It's very very reassuring to know that they have that kind of support. But I don't know if Professor wanted to interject here on that point.
Yeah, hi, good evening, ASP. I just wondered if officers who had to seek help from the various units you mentioned, do they undergo any discrimination or any stigma because of their mental health issues?
That's a very good question, Doc. I just want to say, let me put it into historical context, right? There was a time in the organization when the social work unit would have come on board, because they came on board before even our VSU. As far as I could recall, I could be wrong, stand to be corrected. Officers had a lot of reservation with going to check on their mental health. Most times, in engaging the authority that was there, we had to visit the police hospital, and there was an infamous doctor known as Dr. Bonte.
Infamous. Yeah, infamous indeed.
Yeah, when you go to see Dr. Bonte, somehow or the other, everyone seemed to know, or they found out. That left a negative connotation in terms of officers' attempt to get mental health issues addressed. So within the organization, they would sometimes be ostracized, they would sometimes be ridiculed. They went through that alienation process. And we have, and I could say that the advent of the social work unit, one of our challenge in bringing it into being was the fact that they were placed on station compounds throughout the length and breadth of the country. And when that occurred to, and officers visited the social work unit for issues that affected them socially, again, your colleagues or our colleagues would have found out, and it also placed a pressure on those officers. It also added to that stigma that you referred to, and it placed the officers in a disadvantageous position. As you'll be well aware, the public expects, based on how we have been cultured, to see an officer as a knight in shining armor, almost invincible, just like Superman. So with that perception of how the officers should be by members of the public and even your own peers, when one visit the social worker or the Dr. Bontes of the past, the officer was placed in a disadvantageous position. And there has been a concerted effort to break that stigma, that cycle. So now our social work unit operates out of an office in Port of Spain, an office in Freeport, an office in Tobago. Not necessarily linked from the police service per se, but what have happened is that we are seeing that there is a lot more buy-in to the role and function of the social worker, because your information not getting back out there like how it used to in the past. So confidentiality plays a critical role in terms of when you engage these professionals, how your matter is dealt with. We also have, as an organization, put in place something called peer counselors and mediators, which we feel have added some value or added another layer in terms of how we could identify our officers who are going through different psychosocial situations that might require an intervention. What is needed though is to continue to build on what we have started, is to create a process of recertification and also empowering others to hold the mantle, because as you'll be aware, officers from time to time will either be transferred from one area to the next, and then someone have to hold the rein, or officers will go on leave, and then someone else have to go on after hold the rein. And in doing so, you'll want to have a model where succession planning is captured, a model where you could continue to not just be antidotal, you would also have where the office, the persons who are charged there would have the eye to identify whatever the layers are and cause the officers to get that intervention in a timely manner.
If you're just joining us, folks, you're listening to Dependency, and we are speaking with ASP Gideon Dickson, who is representing the men and women of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service here this evening. And you can join us on our Dependency Facebook page or YouTube channel to join the discussion. And say good evening to all you men and women of the police service out there. Professor, you wanted to add anything to that? And because, Professor, I would like to ask, if an officer who is listening to us right now, listening to, want to reach out, but they're hesitant. How can you motivate them to do that?
Well, I think as ASP Dickson has been saying, that has to begin with some confidence in the service, and confidence in the service, the psychosocial and mental health service that is being provided will, one, address their needs, but also maintain the level of confidentiality that would give the officer a sense that he will not be in any way disadvantaged by seeking help. And I think the key thing is that confidence in the service.
No, there is one part with dealing pressures of the job, but then they have a good life at home, and it can affect their job. But they wouldn't want to talk about that one. That one is harder to really reveal.
Well, it is harder, but I think the anything that impacts on the psychosocial well-being of the officer, I think, should be part and parcel of the intervention offered, so that ultimately, even though it's not happening at the workplace or on the at the work location, it is going to affect the way the individual functions, and therefore would have to be addressed.
Now, ASP Dickson, somebody made a suggestion here on the YouTube chat, was saying that psychology should be a part of, well, he says military training. She says military training. Is that a part of the police training as well, psychology?
It's an interesting question. I don't want to speak directly to it. I know that we have behavioral science officers at the academy offering training in different areas, but I cannot say that it has, within recent time, been a phenomenon as it relates to the training of the officers. It will be welcome if it is not there. But one of the things that I think that we must be mindful of, the old school would have played a pivotal role in nurturing younger officers who would have graduated from the academy. And that level of experience outside there is something that we would want to revisit at some point in time in the organization. Because now, as opposed to the old school, now we have a lot more units, a lot more. Everyone is I'm looking for the word. Everyone is more aligned to different units and of operation or administration, and with that taking place, the layer in which the public have that level of interaction, and that is the charge room. We need to have some more senior officers there to assist in terms of guiding and molding and holding and coaching these young officers who are coming out who the public engage with on a daily basis. So that is something that we have to look at in terms of an organization, how to get the right balance in terms of deployment, how to get the right balance in terms of how we could facilitate that on-the-job practical experience, right?
In relation to that, I have a further question in terms of police procedure now, in terms of how, for instance, if you are in one of those units that is a tactical unit, for instance, and you come upon a very gruesome scene, what is the procedure in terms of preserving not only the evidence, but preserving the mental health of the officers who would have had to engage with that scene?
ASP, before you answer that, I'd like the professor to join us here too, because this is an area of concern, really. So let me phrase that question another way. So they are just like someone who would try drugs and not enjoy it, and really go through a traumatic time, not wanting it again. Then there are those who will try drugs and love it. Now, let's say we have officers who would engage a perpetrator and an officer shoots someone, the person dies. It would affect one officer. That officer will be, every time they close their eye, they would see this person, they would vomit. It would really affect them. And then there's the other officer who will shoot someone and enjoy it and like the feeling. And what's the procedure? What's the policy?
Or someone has no reaction whatsoever.
Oh, yes, someone is neither Professor, you followed me here, right? So what was the procedure, before the professor answers, ASP, what's the procedure when a police officer engages someone, shoots them? Does he go back out to duty as normal the next day, or is that person debriefed for a couple of days before to find out either or before they go back on duty?
So you want me to answer, or you want the professor to answer?
No, you could answer. You could answer first, and then
you are the police officer.
Yeah, you are the police officer. You answer
I
first.
hear from you first.
Yes, and then we'll hear the professor's take on that.
Yeah. Right. Now, as I said, there's room for improvement, and we have come a long way. One of the things that we, as a body, working on right now is to create that departmental order which speaks to when officers are engaged in firefight, that it becomes mandatory for them to actually go and be debriefed by the social worker. Because that has not been created in terms of policy yet, what actually happens is that the supervisor, who is most times exposed to the training or the course in terms of peer counseling, would identify if an officer would require that level of debriefing, and then a referral will be made to the social work unit or even to our victim support unit. And therein is where the engagement takes place to try to bring that officer back to the right level of mental capacity. So it is an ongoing process. We are not fully there yet. What I could say though is that every single operation where there is a discharge of fire, there would be a debriefing by the senior officer in relation to those officers who engage in this firefight. One of our concerns though is not just the firefight, because if you appreciate the stressful work our police officers do, and I'm going to make specific reference now to the child protection unit or the gender-based violence unit or the sexual offenses unit, their work continues to build on a day-to-day basis with limited resources and a limited amount of officers. When that occurs, we need to scientifically assess at what stage do we have an intervention be done for these officers who, on a normal, if you are a civilian, you wouldn't have to engage in, within 1 week, 3 to 5 incidents where children have been molested or have been assaulted or abused. An officer in child protection unit, based on a caseload, you would see that they have been operating with limited strength, and they have a lot of cases that they have to engage. In order to acutely deal with their mental health issues, we need, as a body, to trigger that approach at the correct time when the intervention should also be for our officers. An officer who would have finished work at 24 and probably heading home and fell asleep or was distracted or whatever the case is and get an accident, that officer also is signs of what you would call burnout might be stepping in. We need to identify these things early and be able to have our social work and other entities engage these officers to be able to have them at their best mental capacity all the time.
Professor, how what would you recommend? Because it should be left up just to a social worker, or a psychiatrist to do this intervention? Because I guess there will be two different levels of experience here, a social worker and a psychiatrist. Because I remember I'm only human, and I went on a call and see a young, maybe a child or somebody, well beaten, battered, bruised, and I'm gonna get worked up. So if I find this person and something happens, I would go after that person with a kind of venom, right? So let's say I shoot and kill someone. How should should that be left to a social worker, or should a psychiatrist handle a debriefing of that nature?
Well, I think the difficulty is with resources. I mean, I think that it is possible for a social worker to handle it if that is the remit of their training, and if their training allows them to handle issues like that as a first point in the debriefing process. But
Right.
I think it's a larger problem, which you alluded to before, which is who should get that debriefing. I think the way our systems work now, unless you either display unusual behavior or ask for help, you're not necessarily flagged and encouraged to seek or engage with help. And I think that is where the one of the ways in which the system needs to improve.
Right.
That everybody who's involved should have access to someone for a period of time, so that the impact of the negative experience can be processed. Because again, some people, the response isn't immediate. It might be a week later, 2 weeks later, that they start having
PTSD.
Symptoms that are generated by the experience.
Yeah.
So I think that having a team that addresses those particular individuals, I think would be very useful. And as you mentioned, with the mandate to, as far as possible, try to prevent people from developing PTSD.
Yeah.
Because once PTSD once symptoms of PTSD occur, it's very difficult to treat. So I think the thing is to be able to provide that service for everybody, and a trained social worker would be I think appropriate, but there must be as
At
well
next level.
other services
Yeah.
that are quickly available if there are people who need the input of those other services like psychiatry, psychology.
Yeah, because ASP, excuse Dash, I personally, as a commander or a divisional commander or even a commissioner, I wouldn't like to know that my officers engage someone, and when he's interviewed, he appears to have enjoyed taking someone's life, right? And to me, if as a social worker, I've asked this officer, so how you feel after this, what happened yesterday or today? And the person shows signs of, they almost get an orgasm by this. I supposed to be able now to refer this officer to a higher level of intervention. You understand what I'm saying?
But still that officer, or any officer who's involved in a case like this, or in a matter, an incident like this, has to do their job, which is to investigate a crime or to pursue a suspect. How do you balance those things? Balance the mental well-being of the officer while allowing him or her to do their job.
Me up about. Partner, you know the penalty for human trafficking? Look, I gone or no. Excuse me, please.
Do you know that human trafficking is considered a serious crime in Trinidad and Tobago and is punishable by law under the Trafficking in Persons Act Chapter 1210, or any person who receives a financial or other benefits from trafficking children? an additional 15 years imprisonment for any trafficker who uses or threatens to use a dangerous weapon on a victim, or where the victim suffers serious bodily harm, or the victim contracts a life-threatening illness or is sexually assaulted, or if the trafficker abuses his power as someone entrusted with the care or supervision of a child victim. Imprisonment for 25 years for any member of the Defense or Protective Services or any official or public officer having the powers of arrest who commits an offense. Court can order forfeiture of convicted traffickers' property. A company can be fined $5 million for engaging in tips.
We are the Counter-Trafficking Unit of the Ministry of National Security, Trinidad and Tobago, safeguarding human life.
I am Michael Andre. I'm a recovering addict. I'm the outreach coordinator of Rebirth House. Rebirth House is a rehabilitation center for people who use drugs and they want to stop using, and people with other addictions. We do like individual counseling with them. We have facilities in Chagaramas, Belmont, and St. Anne's. Our admission office at the corner of Charlotte and Oxford Street, Port Spain, and our phone numbers are 623-0952 and 627-8894.
This Sunday on Ion Health, we focus on drug treatment and rehabilitation. Tune in at a special time, 8 p.m. on TV6 and from 8:30 p.m. on the Ion Dependency YouTube channel.
Hi, my name is Professor Dependency from the Centre of Addiction and Mental Health in Toronto, Canada, and you're listening to Ion Dependency with Garth and Natasha at I95.5 FM, Trinidad and Tobago.
This song is dedicated to my mother and mothers all over the world who suffers at the hands of their crack-addicted sons and daughters. This one is for you.
Thank you for staying with us, and thank you for bearing with us for those of you who joined us on our Facebook and YouTube pages. I believe we are back up on a new live on Facebook, so you'll have to check your notifications for that, and the same stream on YouTube. Thank you very much for staying with us.
So, Professor, before we bid you farewell for now, someone wanted to find out about the latest drugs for schizophrenia. What standard do we have, and do we have the latest, or we just barely there?
Well, we have some of the more recent drugs. We don't have the absolute latest, and because of the pace with which drugs are being produced for treatment of serious mental illness, in the last 4 or 5 years alone, there have been 2 or 3 new drugs that have come on the market. So we don't have those, but we do have those that came on the market before that time. And I think that by and large, I think we're doing okay. Again, as the ASP had said, we could do better, but I think we're doing okay with regard to drug availability. However, over the course of the pandemic, we have had a lot of problems with accessing drugs for the hospital system, and psychiatry has been no exception. But we're hoping that will be addressed as time goes on.
All right, if you're just joining us, you're listening to Dependency. We had some connectivity problems just a while ago, but we're back now on our Facebook page, YouTube channel, and I95.5 FM. Professor, what do you like to offer the ASP before we leave, and to the people of Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, I think the message, I think, has to be that your mental health is probably the most valuable thing that you have, because it affects everything that you do. And therefore, it really needs to be nurtured, it needs to be cherished, it needs to be protected. And I think for the people working in the police service and all the protective services, that is even more pertinent. I think the association has to campaign for constant improvement in services, as well as perhaps some innovative ways to give officers time off after they've been exposed to difficult work situations, and to provide ongoing support for them, not just support in the immediate aftermath of incidents, but long-term support and inclusive of support to their family members and their close relatives who are also impacted by these experiences.
Right. Well, Professor, we want to, as usual, thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule. We know you're a very busy man, and we're very lucky to have you. Yes. And we're very lucky to have you with us.
Indeed.
I want to thank you. I'm sure ASP Dickson has, I'm sure appreciated the little input that you would have made.
Yes.
ASP?
Thank you very much, Professor. Your contribution is well received, and note that it will not fall on deaf ears. We see it also as a very important. The mental health, as you say, is the most important health at this point in time, especially as we're in this pandemic, right? As physically strong as you may be strong, if you are not trying to understand that the work in our job in particular, we have seen that with the over 4,500 officers being affected, those who remain would have demonstrated a level of mental strength, which is also very commendable, and as such, the advice we will receive, and we will continue to advocate with the authorities, in particular our executive and administration, to ensure that more long-term initiatives and innovative initiatives are there for police officers to be able to benefit from.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's really important. Natasha, you had some stuff to share. I want to discuss with you technology, ASP, because that's a very important part to policing around the world.
Yes.
And we have a short simulation of two events. One, I know you heard of the Breonna Taylor's killing that was last year, and
before,
and the body cam footage. But first, because that important, I think technologies are very important to making any officer in any part of the world efficient and professional at their job. But Natasha had some stuff to share before that, so.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize you were going so quickly to this, but just in recognition of World Mental Health Day, the World Health Organization provided some information on depression and suicide, and depression at different life stages. How do you deal with suicidal thoughts? How do you live with someone who is suffering from depression? So, Shortman, if you could put up one of the images, B. We could start with B.
And if you're just joining us, you listen to Dependency, and our guest is Assistant Superintendent Gideon Dickson, President of the Police Welfare Association.
Yes.
Right?
So
Vanetta?
Depression, what you should know. If you think that you might have depression, these are some of the things that you should know. Depression, first of all, can happen to anyone, and it is not a sign of weakness. It is, in fact, an illness characterized by persistent sadness and a loss of interest in activities that you normally enjoy, accompanied by difficulty carrying out daily activities. Depression can be treated with talking therapies, medication, or both. Talking really helps. As someone who has been diagnosed with anxiety and depression myself, talking therapy does in fact help. The next one, Shortman. Oh, Vanetta is asking who's the guest. Our guest joining us via video is ASP Gideon Dickson of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service Social and Welfare Association. The next one, living with someone with depression, how can you help? What should you know? All of these things, that depression can happen to anyone. Encourage someone, if you're living with someone with depression, encourage them to seek professional help, and even offer to go to appointments with them. Remember to be patient because recovery can take time. It is not a quick fix. You don't go to a therapist one day and end up cured the next. Recovery is a process and it takes time. And remember as well that in as much as you want to provide support for the person that you're living with who's suffering from depression, remember that it's important to look after yourself as well. Just as we are discussing with Gideon about taking care of police officers, taking care of citizens, police officers have to take care of themselves as well. And this is one way that they can do it, by seeking help if they realize that they are going through some sort of mental stress and or disorder like depression. We'll do one more and then we could go back to you. The next one, short man, D, which speaks to suicidal thoughts. Now, this is a big problem in Trinidad and Tobago. There are a lot of people who either thinking of, have tried, or have committed suicide. And if you feel like life is not worth living, and if you experience thoughts of suicide, know that you're not alone, and this happens to a lot of people. If you're experiencing any of the following: a pain that seems overwhelming and unbearable, feelings of worthlessness or hopelessness, you are not alone, and it is okay to talk about suicide. It may not feel like it's okay. It may not feel like it's for people around you that it's okay to talk about, but it is. You need to do that in order to alleviate some of that pain and those feelings that you're experiencing. So talking about it can help to alleviate those feelings. And if you do feel like life is not worth living, please reach out for help, whether it is someone in your family, in your community, or to a professional. You should reach out for help and talk to somebody about how you feel.
Because as ASP would know, we've had officers who've gone through that.
Yep.
That depression, also
yes,
committed suicide. I was hearing about a police officer who got COVID 3 times. Now that could have you depressed, and you all dealt with that. So ASP, are there still? Shortman, could you bring back in ASP Dickson, please? And if you're just joining us, you're listening to Dependency, and we are having a very important conversation with President of the Police Social Welfare Division in ASP Gideon Dickson. Shortman, go to the body cam footage, please. I wanted to just use this as an example first before we engage the ASP. So let's take a look at this.
People fighting out here? No? How you doing today, sir? Union 5-1, clear the air. I don't see no 29 out here.
How you doing, sir?
I'm good. How you guys doing today? Hey, did you guys see a fight or anything going on out here? No. Anybody arguing? How you guys doing? How you doing, sir?
Right outside, he has a gun, he took the beer, he's just here, standing here.
What is he look like?
He's right here, just went outside with the red.
The dreads?
No, wearing a red, red underwear. It's
red underwear with color shorts.
It's right here.
Yeah, I know, right here, right here.
Beer, Henneken, and he has 2 beer in the hand.
You follow him? Subject, that's 10-0. We're going to be meeting him. Hey, put the gun down! Put it down! Put it down! I got an armed subject running. Southbound, he's armed. Put the gun down! Put it down now! You're going to get shot. Put the gun down now! Put the gun down now! Put it down, man. Put it down. I'm right here. Put the gun down. Put it down. Put it down.
Right, ASP. Now, and it stops just before the
Suspect was shot?
the suspect was shot.
Okay.
Now, we've been saying this for quite a while in Trinidad and Tobago, SP. Body cameras is not just to watch what the police doing, but we have many times police officers would hear of police shootings and people would doubt the police. Body cameras is not to catch the police in any wrongdoing, but it's also protect the police officer. And at the same time to protect maybe the citizen, not maybe, but protect the citizen as well. When are we going to see all our police officers equipped with body cameras?
God. Excellent question. It's a blindsided question though, because I really came to deal with mental health issues.
Yeah, because yeah, but I remember we talk, you say, well, ask me what you want, but you might get that size thing. No, but I think it's important.
No, it could be related to what we discussed.
Yeah, because you see, I know it will be depressing for any officer to know that somebody pulls a firearm on him to defend him and his colleagues. He shoots this individual, but then to hear the media and to hear people, disparage that explanation and dismiss that and say the police officer lied, they just like to kill people. It could have that officer depressed too, knowing that he really executed, his duty. So this is why we're asking the question: why isn't our officers really equipped with it, and why not? And when is it going to happen? I'm sure you would like to protect your officers where that is concerned too.
Totally correct. And I thank you for the opportunity to use your platform to speak to those who are not physically present, but at least hearing, or someone will whisper to them that the police needs more resources. So the question that you asked in relation to when, that is a financial decision that must be taken by the authorities responsible for engaging us in terms of our draft estimates and requests to improve based on technology. And I have listed here as one of our challenges in terms of being able to be that 21st century police service that everyone would require, everyone speaks about.
Yes.
We don't have our own budget. And by not having our own budget, we have to make requests to the government. And based on the funding and how they see national security, those allocations come, right? As it relates to that, had I known that we would have been going there, I could have had some data to present as to, based on this current situation in terms of the budget being read on Monday, how much allocation was given to police so that we'll be able to even engage in terms of these goods, these technological items that we could assist in terms of moving the process forward. So I wouldn't want to speak out of context. I don't have the data in front of me because I wasn't aware we might have undergone here.
Right.
But from a technological standpoint and mental health, now you touch a very sensitive point there in relation to the media and even members of the public when they speak of how the police might have operated when they have to operate. I started off this program by saying that one of our main thrusts is to protect and serve. In doing our primary responsibility of protecting, we are often faced with pushback by communities, by individuals, and these sometimes have fatal consequence, right? It is you go into a situation to engage, hoping to come back out just as how you went in with the perpetrator. We often see within recent time in the space of police. The body cam would be very interesting, would be a welcome asset for us to be able now to identify those persons who would want to engage the police and confront us when we are engaging in our duties. So we welcome it. But right now, even with that, you are seeing a lot of persons using the phone to record. And when you see police take out the phone to do the same thing, the same persons who are recording have issues with the police recording too. No? They have issues with that because, again, we are trying to do our job, and this is our job in terms of enforcing the law. And you find members of the public, and especially in areas that are more depressed than others, you find persons raising up or rising and challenging the police. Those things have negative consequence in terms of the partnership of the police and the people. And to break that cycle, we definitely have to find persons in the community who one would want to consider to be leaders and engage those persons with a view of trying to change the climate in those communities, because the police is not your enemy. The police is not your enemy. However, because of how you see the persons enforcing the law of the land, you tend to approach it with a level of resistance, a level of violence to some extent, a level of aggression with some extent. And most times the persons who are doing that not even fully aware as to the incident that would have triggered the police to be there. The police could have been elsewhere.
No.
So these are things that we are faced with. And in those experiences, again, God, you have where upon completion of the exercise, you have officers are impacted one way or the other. And more so to the extent that it plays on them, because we are human beings, we are not robots. So it plays on the officer, because now you have to treat that situation and live with that situation for the rest of your life.
Yes, of course, and we understand that. This is why now from the video we just saw, this officer now could rest assured that the body camera picked up the young man raising the weapon to fire at him. So he justified in shooting the perpetrator. And I've always said that anytime you're foolish enough to raise a firearm at an officer after you've been instructed to drop your firearm, then what you get, you take. We understand that, but then for our officers' peace of mind and the public to understand what they go through, we need to see it too as well. And we would welcome this technology that has been with us nearly 2 decades already. Mm-hmm. And because this other one we want to show you, might be able to show the entire thing, but this was the other aspect of technology now for law enforcement, which was a reenactment that the entire public can actually see. So when we hear a member of the TTPS shoot someone, then we have a team of people who can put this together and show the public, look, this is how it went down. Whether the officer right or wrong, this is how it went down. So Shortman, let's see that a little bit, and let's walk through it with the ASP. This was a reenactment, an animation reenactment of the Breonna Taylor's shooting by the police.
The police begin to stack. In this reconstruction, we hear the official testimonies given by the 2 officers nearest the door, Mattingly and Nobles, Cosgrove, who's providing cover, and Hoover and Hankinson beside them. And we'll hear from neighbours and Kenneth Walker, who was interviewed by police right after the shooting.
When we all got up in line, I knocked on the door, banged on it.
Just as Mattingly begins to knock, a man emerges from the apartment directly above. He doesn't live there, but is picking up his child after finishing work.
The door right there, that's why the babysitter live. So I came to pick up my little girl.
A squabble with Detective Brett Hankinson ensues, and already the team seems on edge.
I remember Brett extending his gun saying, get back in your apartment, get back in your apartment. Brett was a little bit worked up. I remember looking at Brett saying, Brett, relax. Brett, just relax, relax.
The man retreats inside. The police are supposed to be conducting a knock and announce raid, but that's not what Mattingly says happens at first.
We didn't announce the first couple because our intent was to give her plenty of time to come to the door.
Inside, Taylor wakes up.
So it's a loud bang at the door. She pops up out of sleep. It scared her to death. Me too. Like, who is that?
Banged on the door, no response. Banged on it again, no response. At that point, we started announcing ourselves.
Whether the police announce themselves clearly enough is a critical issue in this story that we'll return to later on. Not knowing who's at the door this late, Walker grabs his licensed handgun.
Another knock at the door. She's like, "Who is it?" Loud at the top of her lungs. No response. So I'm like, what the heck?
They rush to get dressed and walk toward the door.
We never even made it like mid-hallway. But as loud as we were screaming to say who it is, I know whoever would be on the other side of the door could hear us.
Outside, some of the police do hear Taylor.
I can hear somebody inside. I kept telling John, I can hear her.
But after knocking and waiting for around 45 seconds, they decided they've given her enough time to respond and rammed the door open.
The last time, I just said, let's just hit it. And that's when we did the, police search warrant.
We'll show here what the police and Walker describe seeing next.
And I hit it. After the third hit, it flew open. And that's when it hit the fan.
As we're coming to the door like comes off the hinges like an explosion.
The officers now make a tactical mistake. Mattingly steps into the doorway and puts himself in what police describe as the fatal funnel, a position vulnerable to gunfire and hard to move from.
I could see down the hallway, and there's the male and a female, side by side, shoulder to shoulder. Almost like they were together.
The apartment is lit only by the breezeway light that's coming from behind Mattingly and the faint glare of the TV in Taylor's bedroom.
You can't see anybody, though. It was dark. There was no lights.
Thinking it's an intruder, Walker aims low, shoots once, and hits Mattingly in the thigh.
I feel like I aimed down, because I don't need to kill anybody. So I just let off one shot.
Mattingly immediately returns fire.
I got 4 rounds off, and it was like boom, 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 boom.
Then all of a sudden there's a whole lot of shots.
Mattingly fires 2 more rounds when he falls and takes cover. Almost at the same time, Cosgrove moves in and fires, stepping on Mattingly in the process. He has now also put himself in the fatal funnel, and although he's shooting, he appears to have no idea what's happening.
I see blinding, vivid, white light and blackness at the same time. I don't hear any gunfire at all, ever. And I did not have any pain sensation or any recollection that I'm firing.
He continues shooting blindly until he runs out of ammunition, a total of 16 rounds.
If you told me I didn't fire a gun, I'd be like, okay, I believe you.
In response to Walker's shot, Mattingly and Cosgrove together fire 4 shots.
Here, now, ASP, this is of course after a shooting where officers would go through that series of interviews and all of these things to do reenactments of the scene. And then there's a forensic animated version or explanation that the public has access to. We would like to see this for the police service as well. And I think it will take away a lot of, as we say here, stupid talk and doubt and all of that when officers carry out their duties and they especially have to engage in a firefight. Would you agree, yes or no? Or let's hear what you think.
I totally agree. It will add value to policing and operations. One of the things there is that what the public, I would want them to know is that in every single shooting where police involved in, several different investigations take place, inclusive of that by the PCA, the division in where the shooting would have taken place, and even our Professional Standards Bureau. So you have at least 3 entities at minimal engaging what occurred as a result of the engagement by police in a firefight. Now, you have been on that raid who will be affected one way or the other, and their family also will be affected, right? It is important for us as a body to continue to impress upon our principles of training and retraining and certification and recertification. Those things will be able to kick in, because again, it's a split second between the time you see a fire pointing your direction and your ability to discharge in a bid to save your life and other person's life. So that is why that training that I refer to is so critical. And even when you are boarding homes, the enactment there was quite accurate in terms of the officers, and they did not do it properly. So they have put themselves in harm's way. And at the end of the day, there was fatality. That might not have been the intention when encroaching, but again, that is where the principles of training would come back. And the truth is, for all that we are saying and all that we are doing, the entities that investigate after the shooting, they are not consumed with the fact that the last time this officer trained would have been 25 years ago or 15 years ago. They are consumed with the fact that someone died and this is how they die. The organization also has a responsibility, and I'm putting it on public record, to ensure that all our officers continually have access to training and recertification. That is the only direction we could go to be able to create a level of balance when we engage and when these incidents would occur.
I mean, I am so happy to hear you say that, because again, this is one of the areas that we have been harping at over the years in terms of what you just said, the continual training and sharpening of skills for officers at all levels, because as time goes by, things change, situations change, and officers have to be ready to meet with whatever they are confronted with in a way that dignifies the organization. Yeah. But as we about to wrap up, Gideon, could we have your final comments with regard to the topic at hand, which is mental health and how it impacts on the men and women who serve in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service?
Before you do that, ASP, I would like to offer as well I don't know if your officers are trained too as well to when dealing with crack addicts, but our NGO, drug addicts, our NGO offers that, and we hope that we could present a proposal to you all so that we could, and I'm talking about from the point of view of somebody who used crack, was out on the street and have to interact with police officers, and police officers interacting with them. We would like to share that knowledge as obtained in the Center for Addiction and Mental Health in Canada. We saw that up there where they use recovering addicts like myself to
instruct police officers on how to deal with addicts.
Yeah, how to deal with addicts. So I hope that is something that we can engage the police service with.
Yeah.
Well, let me start from that perspective. The association will be willing to meet with your body to be able to get that information and best package it in a bid to be able to add value to our officers when they engage on a day-to-day basis.
Yes.
We are pro anything that will assist in the holistic development of police officers. And so against that backdrop, Tasha has my number. We can always engage and make that happen.
Right.
From the perspective of what Natasha asked for me to speak to in closing,
yes,
I would just want to say we have the police officer is a human being, and he is also predisposed to everything else the average law-abiding citizen goes through. The challenge here now is that he's expected to be superhuman and be able to balance his responsibility with him being a human being. So we have issues which range from the high-risk nature of our job. We have issues which consist of the demands and responsibility, and even more so in this COVID period, more responsibility in place in the police. We are going to be patrolling safe spaces and all these different things. So we have the public perception and even the sensationalizing by the media in terms of when we engage, how things happen. We have issues as it relates to our organizational culture, and we spoke to it earlier in terms of that perception if a person might be mentally having some issues or challenges or have other social misgaps how they treat with these things. We have issues as it relates to when you work in 2021 on a 2013 salary, and even with that salary, your salary is still off for the mark because you didn't get your increment up to this point in time. We have issues as it relates to officers and their own personal health and wellness and well-being, and how do you create that proper work balance life? Or you want to create that ratio in terms of how do you balance work life issues so that you'll be able to enjoy life whilst you live. We have issues as it relates to the training and certification, as I referred to earlier. Now, all these things, we have issues. So we are not unique to any other organization, but the difference here is that our primary responsibility is to continue to serve you. And those issues could in fact add to the mental health issues that police officers face. And it also speaks to the fact that our entities that are providing that level of support, as they continue to man and assist the police with shortage of strength and resources, we need to optimize those entities with the required strength. We also need to bring some technology into place so that we can have a proper monitoring and evaluation system. And I know I'm winding up here now, and we also need to continue to partner with our stakeholders to ensure that what the police bring is second to none and is first class. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You really, you know, we really appreciate this time you took to spend with us.
Yes.
Really appreciate it, man. And we just want to wish you all the best
Indeed.
Going forward in your role as president and representing the men and women. We know it's not going to be an easy task, but we thank you still and we wish you Godspeed.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. All the best to you and all your viewers and listeners.
Okay, Gideon. So take care.
We'll be in touch.
And we'll be in touch. Folks, we apologize again for the connectivity issues, but that happens sometimes when Facebook does. So we direct you immediately to go to TV6,
yes,
where our Iron Health series have started.
Yes.
You know, it's starting at 8 this evening because of broadcast right after. So thank you once again for joining us, and please switch your device to TV6 or put your TV on TV6. The Iron Health has started.
If you missed it, you can also tune in from 8:30 p.m. on the Iron Dependency YouTube channel to watch it from the beginning. This is episode 11 of the Iron Health series, and we're talking about drug treatment and rehabilitation. So tune in to that. TV6 now and 8:30 on the Iron Dependency YouTube channel.
Okay, I listen, and all the rest on Facebook and YouTube who joined us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care. Be safe.
Good night.
Good night.
Eye on Dependency.